Have you ever heard of Room 666? They say everyone who stays there never comes out. But it's not just a myth, it's a documented mystery. In this video on Midnight Terrors, I'll tell you the terrifying story that made this room the most haunted place in the world. If you love scary stories, get ready. This one might make you think twice before booking a room in an abandoned hotel. The road leading to the hotel was deserted, winding through the dense fog that had settled like an eerie veil over the town. The headlights of my car barely pierced the thick mist, making the towering silhouette of the hotel emerge slowly, its grand yet decayed facade looming ahead like a forgotten relic of time. I had heard the stories. Everyone had. Guests who stayed in room 666 never checked out. Some simply vanished overnight, their belongings left untouched, as if they had melted into the very walls of the cursed room. Others were said to leave changed, refusing to speak of what they had experienced, their eyes hollow and their minds fractured. But I wasn't a believer. Ghosts, curses, haunted hotels. It all seemed like a desperate attempt to scare people away, to keep the mystery alive. And I had made it my mission to prove it wrong. Inside, the lobby smelled of dust and time. The wallpaper curled at the edges, revealing cracks in the walls that resembled veins, pulsing in the dim lighting. The silence was oppressive, pressing against my ears like an invisible force. The only sound was the rhythmic tick-tock of a grandfather clock, its pendulum swinging slowly, almost hypnotically. Behind the reception desk, an old man sat, dressed in an ill-fitted uniform that had long lost its crispness. His face was lined with age and worry, his hands resting on the desk with an unnatural stillness. He didn't greet me. He only stared. "You really want to stay here?" His voice was hoarse, edged with something between concern and warning. I forced a chuckle, trying to break the tension. "It's just a room. What's the worst that could happen?" For a long moment, he didn't speak. His gaze didn't waver, as if he was searching for something. Hesitation, fear, doubt within me. When he finally moved, it was abrupt. He reached under the desk and pulled out a key, old and rusted, its surface marked by strange carvings I couldn't decipher. "Take it," he said, sliding it forward. His fingers trembled slightly. I reached for it, feeling the cold metal against my palm. Just as I turned to leave, his voice dropped to a whisper, almost swallowed by the silence around us. "If something knocks at night," he said, "don't open the door." I hesitated, my hand tightening around the key. I wanted to ask what he meant, but a part of me already knew. I stepped into the room, the air heavier than I expected, as if the walls held on to something unseen. The dim yellow light from the ceiling flickered faintly, casting uneven shadows across the floor. It was normal. Too normal. A bed with stiff, white sheets, a wooden desk pushed against the far wall, a small window that revealed nothing but the dark, empty street below. Yet something felt wrong. I set my bag on the chair and exhaled. "It's just a room," I told myself again. Nothing weird, nothing haunted. As the clock struck midnight, the silence inside grew louder. I was about to drift into sleep when I heard it. A whisper. Soft, nearly imperceptible, curling into the air like mist. I sat up, my pulse quickening. I listened carefully, straining to catch the sound again. There. Low murmurs, indistinct. Coming from inside the walls. I swung my legs over the bed and stood slowly. The murmurs remained faint, almost teasing, like distant voices just out of reach. I pressed my ear to the wall. Silence. Then a knock. Software deliberate. It came from inside the closet. I froze, My mind raced back to the old man's warning earlier. If something knocks at night, don't open the door. For the first time that night, I felt it. The creeping, cold realization that I was not alone. I sat motionless on the edge of the bed, my pulse hammering in my ears. The knock had been soft, barely audible, but undeniably real. I swallowed hard, staring at the closet door. It was just a few feet away, closed, ordinary. Too ordinary. The old man's words echoed in my mind. Don't open the door, but curiosity clawed at me. Maybe it was just the old wood settling. Maybe my tired mind was playing tricks on me. I slowly reached for my phone. My fingers trembled as I activated the camera, set it to record, and placed it on the desk, angled towards the closet. If something was happening, I needed proof. I climbed into bed, forcing myself to lie still. I listened. Silence. Minutes passed. Then, whispers, faint, curling through the room. I clenched my teeth. It was coming from the closet again. The door didn't move. There was no visible sign of anything inside, but the whispering grew louder. And then something even worse happened. My phone, resting steadily on the desk, slid forward slightly, as if someone had touched it. I bolted upright, snatching my phone with shaking hands. The screen still blinked, recording. I hesitated, then tapped play. For a moment, there was only silence, just me shifting in bed. Then, at exactly 3:06 a.m., something appeared in the video. A shadow. It crawled slowly across the closet door. Not a trick of the light. Not my imagination. And then, just before the video cut off, something knocked again. But this time, it came from inside the closet. My heart pounded as I sat frozen on the bed, staring at the closet door. The recording on my phone had captured something impossible. A shadow, moving on its own. I reached for the lamp and turned it up to its highest brightness, flooding the room with pale yellow light. Nothing changed. The closet remained closed, the furniture still, the air eerily silent. Just paranoia, I told myself. It has to be. I stood, gripping my phone tightly, and walked toward the closet door. My fingers hovered over the handle. I hesitated. Then, a faint scratching sound from the other side. I jerked my hand back. It wasn't loud, just the soft, rhythmic scrape of something against the wood, as if something inside was shifting slightly. A chill ran down my spine. I swallowed hard and stepped back, retreating to the desk where my bag rested. That's when I noticed the bathroom door. It was slightly ajar. I was sure it had been closed earlier. I approached cautiously, my breath uneven. With slow, deliberate movements, I nudged it open fully, revealing a pitch-black bathroom. The mirror was cracked, and on the wall, scrawled in shaky, jagged handwriting, was a message. Don't look at it. My stomach twisted. I knew exactly what it was referring to. The closet. But before I could react, the bathroom door slammed shut on its own. I stumbled back from the bathroom door, my pulse pounding in my ears. The message on the wall burned in my mind. Don't look at it. I knew exactly what it was. The closet. The old man at reception had warned me. The previous guests who stayed in this room had disappeared, never to be seen again. But there was one thing I hadn't asked. Did anyone survive? I grabbed my jacket and rushed out of the room, my footsteps echoing against the empty hallway as I made my way down to the front desk. The old man was still there. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, as if he had expected I wouldn't return. Who was the last person to stay in room 666? I asked, my voice firmer than I felt. He hesitated. The pause stretched too long. Then, with a sigh, he muttered, "A young man, about your age." He stayed one night. What happened to him? I demanded. The old man licked his lips, slowly, nervously. He didn't answer at first. Then finally he whispered, "He never checked out." I swallowed hard. "You mean, he disappeared?" "No." His voice dropped even lower, as if afraid someone might overhear. "I mean, he's still there." My blood ran cold. "Still there? What do you mean? The room was empty when I arrived?" The old man's expression didn't change. "You may not have seen him," he said, "but that doesn't mean he isn't there." And as he spoke those words, I realized something. The whispers from the closet last night. They hadn't been meant to scare me. They had been someone trying to warn me. My breath felt shallow, my pulse pounding as I stepped back from the front desk. The old man's words echoed in my head. "You may not have seen him, but that doesn't mean he isn't there." I forced myself to stay rational. It had to be paranoia. Still, when I got back to my room, I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were listening. Midnight came. I was lying in bed, forcing myself to ignore the unnatural heaviness in the air, when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, heavy, coming from the hallway outside my room. I sat up, straining to listen. The steps stopped right in front of my door. The handle twitched, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement, as if someone was testing whether it was locked. I held my breath. Then, with the faintest creak, the footsteps moved away. I exhaled, feeling the pressure in my chest ease slightly. But something inside me whispered, "Check the hallway." I didn't want to, but I did. I approached the door cautiously, fingers trembling as I unlocked it and pulled it open a fraction, just enough to peek outside. The hallway was empty, but just as I was about to close the door, my gaze drifted toward the far end of the corridor, and I saw him. A man stood there, unmoving. His back was toward me, his clothes ripped and dust-covered, as though he had been standing there for years. I swallowed hard. My voice came out hoarse. "Hello?" The instant the word left my mouth, he turned around. Too fast, too unnatural. And when I saw his face, my stomach twisted in horror, because there was nothing there. Just smooth, pale skin. A face without eyes, nose, or mouth. And yet, I could feel him looking at me. I slammed the door shut, locking it as fast as my hands would move. The footsteps started again, coming toward me. And then, the knocking began. Not at the door, not at the bathroom, at the closet. I left the front desk feeling uneasy. The old man's words lingered in my mind. "You may not have seen him, but that doesn't mean he isn't there." What did that mean? Was he talking about the whispers? The shadow? I returned to my room, my steps slower than before. The hallway was dim, the flickering overhead light casting uneven shadows on the cracked wallpaper. Then, I heard footsteps. Not my own. They came from behind me, slow, deliberate. I turned quickly. There, at the end of the hallway, someone stood perfectly still. His back was turned to me, his posture rigid, as if waiting for something. "Hello?" My voice was strained, barely audible. The figure didn't move. I took a cautious step forward, but before I could get close, he moved. Not like a normal person. It was instantaneous, jerky, as if something had dragged him a few feet forward in one violent motion. My breath hitched. The figure still faced away, but his arms, they were too long, stretched unnaturally at his sides. I stepped back. Then, he turned his head. Not all the way. Just enough. Enough for me to see that his face wasn't right. His eyes were missing. Not hollow, not empty. Just not there at all. The moment I blinked, he was gone. Nothing but silence remained in the hallway. I stared at the empty space where he had stood, my skin crawling with something I couldn't explain. This was no ghost story. Whatever was happening in room 666, it wasn't just the room. I stood frozen at the front desk, the old man's words echoing in my mind. You may not have seen him, but that doesn't mean he isn't there. I turned, glancing back toward the hallway leading to my room. The air felt different now, thicker, heavier. A quiet dread settled in my chest. Still, I forced myself to walk back upstairs. The corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit by flickering overhead bulbs. My footsteps echoed against the worn-out carpet, the silence too deep for comfort. Then, I saw him. A man stood halfway down the hallway, his back to me. His clothes were torn, like he had been wandering here for years, forgotten by time. My mouth went dry. "Hello?" My voice came out hesitant, barely more than a whisper. He didn't move. I took a slow step forward, my pulse hammering. The lights flickered again, and for a moment his shadow disappeared. But he was still there. "Sir?" I tried again, a little louder. Suddenly he turned. It happened too fast, as if someone had grabbed his body and twisted it unnaturally toward me. That's when I saw his face, or rather, the empty space where his face should have been. No eyes, no mouth, just blank, smooth skin. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if studying me. Then, it moved. Not walked, not ran. It shifted forward in an unnatural blur, closing the distance between us in an instant. I bolted for my room, my heart slamming against my ribs. The door was already open. I must have left it ajar in my panic earlier. I rushed inside, slammed it shut, and locked it. The silence felt deafening. For a moment, I thought I had escaped. Then I heard it. A knock. Software deliberate. Coming from inside the closet. I pressed my back against the locked door, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The knocking hadn't stopped. It was coming from the closet, steady, deliberate, as if whatever was inside wasn't in a rush, but it wanted me to know it was there. I refused to look at it. I needed a distraction, anything to keep my mind from spiraling into panic. My eyes darted around the room, then landed on the framed pictures hanging on the walls. A deep unease crawled over me. They looked different. Yesterday they were just generic images, peaceful landscapes, blurry fields, simple decor. But now they had changed. In one, the trees were gone, replaced by twisted, skeletal branches that clawed toward a pitch-black sky. Another showed what had once been a quiet meadow. But instead, there were figures standing in the distance, just shadows, faceless and unmoving. And the third one, my throat tightened. It was a portrait of a man in an old suit. But the longer I stared, the more I realized. His face was missing, just like the man I had seen in the hallway. A soft rustling filled the room. Not from the walls, not from the closet, from the pictures, as if something inside the frames was moving. Then, laughter, echoing faintly behind me. I didn't turn around. The laughter behind me faded, not like a normal sound would, but like it had been cut off abruptly, as if something realized I had heard it. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to focus. I needed to leave. I grabbed my bag, ignoring the shifting pictures on the walls, and rushed toward the door. My fingers trembled as I twisted the handle. Locked. I tried again, harder this time. The handle wouldn't budge, as if something on the other side was holding it in place. A deep, suffocating cold crept into the room. My breath came out in sharp gasps, misting in the air like I had stepped into an ice chamber. I ran to the window, my last chance. I pulled the curtains aside and darkness. Not the street, not the town, not buildings or lights or anything that should have been outside. Just nothing. A deep, empty void, stretching infinitely beyond the glass. And then, deep within the void, something shifted. Not a person, not an animal. Something waking up. Something looking back at me. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. The air in the room thickened, pressing against my lungs, whispering through the silence. Then, a voice. Software familiar. You can't leave. The voice lingered in the air, whispering through the suffocating silence. You can't leave. I backed away, my breath shallow, cold sweat clinging to my skin. The window was impossible. There was nothing beyond it but an endless void. And the door? Blocked. I wasn't just trapped. Something was keeping me here. I turned, scanning the room with growing unease. The air felt thicker, charged with something unseen, the shifting pictures, the whispers, the shadow in the closet. But now I felt watching eyes. Then, movement. Not in the mirror, not in the closet, right next to me. I spun around. Nothing. But the feeling remained, an eerie awareness, like a presence hovering just out of reach. Then, the worst part. The bed sank slightly, just for a moment, like someone had sat down beside me. My body refused to move. The bed had shifted. Something invisible had just sat beside me. The air felt suffocating, thick with the weight of something unseen, but undeniably there. Then, another movement. The floor creaked, a slow, deliberate sound, as if footsteps were pacing around me. If you're reading this, it's too late. The words scratched against my thoughts, unspoken, yet unmistakable. I looked toward the desk. The drawer was now open, and inside sat a yellowed piece of paper covered in jagged handwriting. The room won't let you leave until it takes what it wants. I swallowed hard. What did it want? Before I could process it, the shadows shifted. Something in the room was getting closer. I forced my gaze away from the paper, locking onto the walls instead. And that's when I realized they were moving. A slow, pulsing rhythm, like a creature inhaling and exhaling. The wallpaper rippled slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if something beneath it was alive. Every instinct screamed for me to leave, but I was trapped, the exit blocked, the window revealing nothing but void. Then, the closet door creaked open, and inside, there was only darkness. Not normal darkness, something deeper, something alive, and from within, a voice whispered my name. I staggered backward, desperate to find something familiar, something real. My eyes landed on the mirror above the dresser. But what I saw wasn't me. The figure staring back wore my clothes, had my posture, but it wasn't me. Its eyes were different, too wide, too knowing. Then, slowly, it smiled and lifted a hand, waving at me. Something inside me snapped. I forced my breath to steady, clenched my fists and shut my eyes. I won't be afraid. The whispering stopped, or the laughter vanished. When I opened my eyes again, the room was empty. No shifting pictures, no moving walls, no whispers. But I wasn't in the hotel anymore. I was somewhere else. Somewhere outside time. Days later, the hotel staff checked room 666. They found nothing. No sign I had ever been there. But the room remains, waiting for its next guest. And when it does, it will take something from them, too.